You was
I said,
okay.
yes, what transpired in Lagos merely exposes the fraud, the shambolic nature of what we refer to as democracy. In the Lagos State election, I'm sure the APC will clear all the seats. In fact, they celebrated their winning the chairmanship elections the moment they secured the APC primaries.
Yeah, all
And
this,
it's
all the
not,
local government polls were won by them.
yes, but it's not just in Lagos APC. You won't only blame the APC for this in Lagos State.
Okay.
Because in other parts of the country where other parties control the governorship, the government house, they also win 100%. So it just shows that we are just fooling ourselves, saying we have a democracy. But then Nigerians, that's why Nigerians have to strategize on how to ensure that the similar rot does not display itself at the federal level. Because if it does that, then the country is doomed for another 4 years. But what we have in Lagos State, in all the states, as local government elections, is just absolute crap. It does not make any sense. You will see that clearly there is no governance, there is no dividend of democracy to the electorate. People are not even coming out to vote, and yet you have 100% return of all the seats for the ruling party that has not performed anything. If this continues, we should all realize that those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change inevitable. If we continue to tell the people that, look, despite whatever you think, the party that is ruling will continue to rule, it will get to a time when the public will snap. And usually when that snap occurs, it does not tell good for the society.
All right, Barrister Ezeluchi, the House of Representatives Committee on Constitution Review is considering a bill seeking to amend the Constitution to reform the mode of appointing the chairman of INEC by involving the National Judicial Council. Now, the proposed amendment aims to involve the NJC in the selection of the INEC chairman, thereby enhancing the independence, credibility, and transparency of the appointment process. The electoral reform is headed by the late Chief Justice of Nigeria, Muhammadu Uwais, in 2007. You'll recall recommended constitutional amendments that would insulate INEC from the political influences of the executive arm of government in terms of its composition and funding. The panel recommended that the power to appoint the INEC board be transferred from the president to the NJC, while its funding was to be a first-line charge on the consolidated revenue of the federation. Do you think if this method is adopted, that there will be a transparent mode of conducting general elections in this country?
Unfortunately, what the late Supreme Court Justice said about transferring the appointment of INEC board and chairman to the NJC, which is the Nigerian Judicial Commission, it doesn't do anything. This NJC itself that appoints the justices of the court, how far has the court fared? Are the courts any better? Are the judges appointed under the system any better? And you see, the problem with this country is that every new tenure of legislators will embark on a so-called constitutional amendment process. And this charade has been happening since the commencement of this republic, since the 1999 transition from military to civilian.
Okay.
Every 4 years, they take us around this circus, this charade of constitutional amendment. How can you amend a fundamental fraud? The Nigerian Constitution, which has as its preamble, as its very first word, we the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having solemnly declared, make unto ourselves this constitution. It's a fraud because nobody sat anywhere and declared that we need this constitution. And that is why every time you keep on amending and re-amending and re-amending, and you are still where you are. Back to what the House of Reps is proposing. Okay, if you eliminate or remove the appointment of the INEC chairman from the president, have you removed the appointment of the Inspector General of Police and the service chiefs from the president? And it is these same security agencies that are used to cause confusion and the electoral malpractices in the election. So the issue is not cosmetic changes. It's not to change one or two parts of it and say you are doing electoral reform. It will not work because the fundamental, the basics of the constitution of the country is fraudulent. That is the constitution. The only way we can make progress in this country is to have a holistic review. This constitutional conference decide, do we want to make this country work? If we don't, what do we want? Do we want to split? And not continually fool ourselves that we're making amendments upon amendments. Look at the kind of amendments we already have for the electoral laws. There should be the device machines, automatic transmission of results, and all that stuff was in our laws. And what's happened at the last election, and all this the midterm elections that are taking place, each one gets worse than the previous ones. So the issue is not constitutional review or amendment of this, is to totally bring down this structure and say, do we want to rebuild? Do we want to stick together, and do we want a nation?
But there needs to be a process to bring down the structure. It's one step at a time, because that the destructure, or will I say the corruption, has gotten so deep into the marrow of the system that to begin to uproot it, in fact, you're going to literally be causing chaos in the political landscape. So don't you think that this will be a step in the right? That is, if the Senate will respond as soon as possible, if they will approve of this, because as it stands right now, we have a Senate that doesn't say no to the presidency. They don't question anything on the presidency. INEC reforms have been on. INEC has submitted about 100 and something reforms. It's still sitting in the National Assembly. They haven't considered it as something of import to look into. Not to talk of stripping the appointment of INEC chair from the president. So, between now and 2026, do you think it's possible that this will be considered, knowing how things are in this part of the world, politically?
Now, no matter what you consider, ask yourself, like I said, for the past 5-6 election cycles, we have gone around talking about electoral reforms and constitutional reforms, and each one gets worse than the previous one. So if it needs to have that chaos, let us have it and solve these issues once and for all. Because all this rigmaroling does not help anybody. Is it the House headed by Abbas, that is Abbas, or the Senate headed by Akpabio, that will produce something that will be against or that will not be workable for Mr. Tinubu? Let us be serious, for goodness sake. These characters in office have already held the country by the jugular. So if it means whatever, let us follow them squarely and ensure that if we have to have any change, it must be holistic. It must be made up of the constituent peoples of Nigeria, and not this fraud of the constitution we keep on calling the Nigerian Constitution, which is not a Nigerian document at all. The Nigerian Constitution, let me remind people once more, is merely a shadow of a military decree number 24 of 1999, which was signed by one person, Abdul Salam Abubakar, the then head of state. So it is not a people's constitution. And no matter how much you re-amend and amend it, nothing good will come out of it. That is the reality.
All right, Barrister Ezeluchi, thank you so much for your input. I sincerely